All right, we're back for our final recorded session that we're going to be doing together. And just be aware that obviously with your inputs, because we'll be getting more of your input now, we'll be recording it. So just be aware that your voice will most likely be heard. Now, session 3, everyone, is in your notes. You can follow along there. The main purpose is to now, that's the practical side, to discover and identify and apply the graces required in marriage to what we're calling real scenarios, all right? So I'm doing inverted commas there for these real scenarios that we're going to talk about. The text that we are using is in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 8. God is able to make all grace abound to you in all things in every situation. So we're going to look at 3 situations. Through these times, having all that you need so that you can abound to every good work. So we're going to read the scenario. We're going to ideally use a highlighter or a pen to underline any issues you can see. All right, so you need to think about, that's an issue, all right, or that's something that's a point of order. And then what we'll do is we're going to talk about, firstly, what are the issues? Secondly, husbands, what are the issues for the men? Women, what are the issues for the wife? And then what are the means of grace? You've got your handouts in front of you, so I've given you some handouts. We're also going to look at so on page 1 is all the putting off, putting on. You see them there? It's like a ton of them, putting off, putting on. And with our first scenario, we can say, definitely it's an issue of impatience and they've got to rejoice in trials. And we can put an S1 for scenario 1 there and sort of do a bit of a mapping exercise. Over the page, on page 2, you'll see the one another's, and we'll apply a couple of the one another's. All right, so we'll look at our first scenario and say, well, what one another's could they apply? And they might have to serve one another or bear with one another and put a S1 next to those because it relates to scenario 1. And then we'll look at what means of grace they will need to apply in table 3. Now, on table 3, as you're looking at it there, can you number them 1 through to 7 again on the left-hand side, please? So with your pens, just write 1 through to 7 on the left-hand side. Just on the other page there, Jake, and we can get them in. All right, now page 3 and 4 are my homework, so don't worry about that now. That's a little later on after our session. So we're going to start our 3 scenarios now. And I guess my only fault in this is that I've just shown you the 3 individuals who we're talking about. Jason and Janine, Danny and Dorothy, and Freddie and Frida. You can see what I've done there. I've even alliterated the names, Steve. Sort of alliteration crazy, aren't I? It's sick, isn't it? The problem is that I haven't given you the scenarios to look at, have I? To read through. So I'm going to maybe ask Karen, can you read our first scenario? And then you might need to write down some words that you're hearing because clearly I've not done a good job of that. That's the only thing I think in my design that I've really dropped off. I could have had the scenario up there. So we're going to read it and you just need to listen carefully and write down and listen about what's going on. And then we're going to I'm going to ask you, remember, if you can tell me what the issues are for Jason and Janine, you're most likely able to see your own issues too. Then fellas, we're going to talk about Jason. Ladies, we're going to talk about Janine. And then we're going to talk about what one another's. What do they need to put off, put on? And what means of grace do they need to utilise? All right? So all the tools for you to take into your marriage and go, what's our issue? What do I need to do? What do you need to do? What are we putting on, putting off? What are the one another's? What are the means of grace we need to apply? Let's do it. Yeah, use the microphone. We're recording this session and then the others we're not. So can you please take it away for us in scenario 1? Thank you, Karen.
Scenario 1. Jake and Janine are a Christian couple, married 4 years with 1 child that's roughly 2.5 years old. They're expecting their second child soon. They have recently embraced the reform way of thinking and have been at GCC for approximately 6 months. In talking with them after a Sunday service, Jake mentions that he is becoming frustrated with Janine as he attempts to try and establish some kind of regular Bible reading and prayer together. This has failed despite his most recent attempts. The mornings seem too busy and dinner times have not worked due to feeding problems with their child. When Janine admits that when Jake has mentioned his plan for regular devotions and to start a catechism for the children, eventually he seems angry and exasperated. Don't even get him started on how they cannot even seem to manage to get to church on time. Really gets him irritated and annoyed at her. Janine just clams up as she doesn't want to upset him any more than he already is. Even worse, Janine thinks that they don't really agree on much. Since their first child has come into the world, it's best that she stays quiet and lets him work out what the future looks like.
All right. Now, I know we mentioned the word Jake there, and we've got a Jake with us. That's why I changed it to Jason, because when I wrote it, I must have had you on my mind. But this has nothing to do with you, Jake, okay? Just to be clear on that, all right? So it is Jason we're talking about. That's okay. Well, in the original draft, which Karen had, she's reading from the original draft there. So I must have been thinking about you in the moment, mate. So there you go. All right. Open forum. What are the issues you see going on in this marriage? You need to give me some love here. What do we got? Andrew, you got something? Okay, well, we'll talk about him in a minute. Let's just talk about the marriage itself. Then we'll get to the men, then we'll get to the ladies. So in general, what's going on in the marriage? We talked about some of the areas of breakdown, some of the areas, what are the topics that they need to work on as a couple? Okay, put it in, write it in. And what are the issues? Communication. All right, what are some of the other issues that are going on here between Jason and Janine? Laura? The what? Okay, yes. So with Janine, she is just struggling to keep it together. So what would the issue be there, Karen? If she's sort of she's not thinking catechism here. She's just thinking, I just need to keep this train on the tracks. Yep, use your mic if you want there, but yes, that's right. Stability. Okay. Yeah, so just let's call just agreement and order in the home. Agreement and order in the home. Good work, Eddie. You're firing there. I love it. All right. This could be just an organisational thing, but yeah, both need to be on the same page. And at this point, what are we calling it when, Jason's thinking one thing and Janine's thinking, well, I'm not sure about that. What's going on there? What do we call that? It is a disconnect. I think it's disconnect around expectations. I'm here just trying to look after the kids. You want to start this thing. How do we line this thing up here? So it could be unrealistic expectations. It could be uncommunicated expectations, which Jason probably thinks he's communicated. Certainly that's certainly going on there. Does Jason have good intentions? Of course he does. He's got the right idea. But how he goes about it, implementation, men, all right? Can't just change everything like that, can you? So you need to pace yourself. You need to bring your wife with you, all right? So that's really sort of the issues. Now, men, I need to hear from you. What what does Jason need to consider here? All right, so fellas, you need to talk to me now. Can't just look at me, you got to talk to me. What does Jason need to consider? Kana? Yeah, I think that's a grace that he needs. So you can put a G and then equals grace. So of anger, or sorry, patience, should I say, because he's angry, or just getting frustrated, I think was the other word, Karen, I think that we mentioned, frustrated. Any other graces that go along with that? What other graces? Think of Galatians 5, think of 2 Peter 1. What other graces might Jason need? Good work, Brian. Self-control around being what? Flexible. Well, darling, I'll give you more time. What do you need? How can I help? Just be flexible with things. All right? If you're too stiff and starchy and legalistic, it's going to break, isn't it? Self-control. What else can Jason be helped with? Joel, you got anything? Well, we'll get to the one another's in a minute. I certainly think that's on the list. All right, so we'll get to all the tools in a minute, all the handouts. We're just trying to spot things now. Is there any other graces that he might need? I think of a grace starting with a K, a bit of kindness, Steve. Be kind to your wife. I mean, she's probably at breaking point at some mornings. I mean, they've only got just the one child at the moment, but sometimes one child can do it for you. All right. So a bit of kindness. How could he show his kindness to his wife? What could he do? Yeah, instead of just saying, well, isn't it time for us to be doing this thing now that I've got planned, let me help you out with the dishes so we can actually get to that, or something to those ends. All right, and in the communication side, what could he start to do with his wife at least? In the communication side. Any thoughts? Yeah, maybe. Great. So initiate it at the appropriate time. All right. And maybe thinking about, he wants to start prayer, he wants to start some sort of regular devotion, discussing when the best time for that would be. Fellas, any idea when that time might be in this particular context with young child, mother who's sort of working through some things still? Right, so you guys agree on what that is, and then that's the time that you're praying together, that's the time that you're reading the scripture and doing what needs to be done. So, yeah. Steve, any other inputs for Jason that you would give? We're good? Have they been answered? Oh, well done, guys. If you got Steve's answers, you're looking pretty good there, so well done. Ladies, all right? Let's talk about Janine. Where does Janine need to consider the graces? What does she need to sort of consider here in this process? She's a part of it. Ladies, you're on now. Beck? Great. So what would we call that in a biblical category? I agree with your statement totally. She would need to extend what or show what? Well, grace in general, but what grace? The grace of what? Submissive love. All right. Remember, we don't want to get caught into just saying grace in general. We want to be specific about the graces required. So you're exactly right, Rebecca. She needs to say, hey, I know you're trying to do the right thing. It's just tricky right now. We will get there. And so she's also showing her what? Her support. All right, what else? Jess, Natalie, do you guys see anything that Janine could help with here? Anything? All right, Amy, what was that? Yeah, so talking through how they can work together, is that what you, yeah, so the communication side of things? Yeah, that's what you said, right? Right, well, in this scenario, I mean, as Karen just mentioned there, she is basically thinking it's best that she stays quiet and just lets him make all the decisions. Do we see a problem with that? Yeah. So she needs to be invested in the conversations. She needs to be invested back into what's going on in the family. She just can't disconnect. Karen, what did you have for other helps with Janine? Just I'll get you to use your mic because that's all right. No, you're doing good.
I had a few things here. It's easy just to read things on a bit of paper, black and white, but you know, scenarios deal with real issues that can crop up in any marriage. So everything should be done in love and seasoned with grace. So the husband's becoming angry, and she's just throwing her hands up in the air and saying, "Oh well, too bad." You know, she's not actually contributing to helping in the situation. The main thing that I see is the issue is that for the wife particularly is that she's putting the child first. God comes first. Husband is the head of the home and the marriage, and his leading should be followed and submitted to by the wife. Not without discussion, of course. We're not automatums. We don't just say yes sir, no sir, through bags full sir. Yep. I think she's possibly got the child in the place of being the boss of the home, you know, and that needs to be sorted out. And I know it's a practical thing that needs to take place over time. It just doesn't happen when you get a baby.
Correct.
You've
got to work at that.
You need to work at it and train the child to know their place in the family, because the husband and wife make the family, not the children.
They're the foundation.
The children are a welcome addition to the family, but the husband and wife are the main characters and the main relationships. So if the wife is putting the baby first, now of course children need feeding and everything, but those things can be details that need to be tidied up, and to have specific feed times like routine for the child. You don't let the child dictate the routine, you dictate the routine. So you make it work for your family.
This is excellent, yes. So
and I think that's a really big issue for many marriages and the breakdowns of marriages, because the kids come first. The wife takes care of the kids, tend to be the main protagonist in the story. And so, you know, they pour all their stuff, all their love, all their time, their energy into the children. And 30 years later or 20 years later, when the kids have left home, the husband and wife haven't worked on their relationship. The kid has taken control of the home. So it just is a disaster. So I see that as really one of the root causes of all the other frustrating
I can see you're a discerning lady, because that is really one of the Achilles heels underneath this scenario that needed to be brought out. And so there's this little line, you may have heard of it before, but the good becomes the enemy of the best. So what she's doing is good. She's looking after her son? Yes. It's good, but it's become the enemy of the best, right? Which is their marriage. So do both, but it's a point of order, and the point of order is an issue of discernment that needs to be picked up. So yeah, excellent. All right. Great work on both of those. Now they can work at this. This can still work, but what we need to do now is let's go to our table, and table 1. What is something that Jason can put off and put on? Anyone? Table 1. Okay, yes. Anything on the right-hand side that ends with self-control, which is what? 1 up the top, anger. Put off anger, put on self-control. Where else are you seeing them, Steve? Losing temper. So you can put an S1 next to losing temper. You can put an S. I put an S1H for the husband. S1H next to anger, because that's scenario 1 and a H for the husband. I put an S1H for any others? I found another one for S1H apart from the one Steve found in losing temper, although you can put an S1H there. See any others? Yes? What else does Jason need to put off? Fellas? Good work, Joel. You go to the top of the class now. That was the one I had. I put an S1H next to that. Scenario 1, husband. Put off impatience, put on rejoicing in trials. All right, what about the wife? S1W. Ladies, what do you see? Laura, you see anything for where we can put off and put on for Janine? Which one? Oh, stubbornness? Is she being stubborn? Or she could be if she's choosing to switch off. Yeah. Okay, let's put it in. So S1W, stubbornness, put on submission. And maybe stubborn in the fact that she's just switching off. Disengaging. Well, that's a deliberate choice not to engage. That can be stubborn. That's a bit of a stubborn spirit. I don't want to talk about it now. I've got too much to take care of here. Well, no, you should still engage in the conversation. All right, good work, Laura. Anything else for Janine? Jess, yeah. Why do you say that? I'll accept that. Did you have that one, Karen, at all? Yeah, Jess, why would you say it's a loss of first love? I mean, it's not that I don't disagree with you there. How do we even know she's getting any private Bible reading, any input whatsoever? She could be spiritually starving. So yeah, I'd put an S1W there. Anything else? Beck or Fran, you guys see anything? Amy, inputs from you too? Yep, okay. Is that down the bottom or up there? Whereabouts is that? It's about in the middle. Oh yeah, there it is. I did, there you go. We can do an S1W there, next to lack of submission, disrespect. Put on broken will. What do they mean by broken will? I'm not sure what they mean by broken will. Ooh, now you should be using your mic because I really want this on the recording. You should say that again.
It could be other gods. Now, when we think of gods, we think of, demonic things that we worship or whatever, But that could be materialism. It could be children. In fact, I have seen many parents, and unfortunately it's been the mother, who tend to have their kids on a pedestal and make them little gods in the home, and the kids come first. Whatever the kid wants, the kid gets. I mean, kid is a terrible word, really. The child, whatever the child wants, So they can often come before God. They can come before church. They can come before the husband, and yes, they have to have their time where they are actually looked after and nurtured and everything else. But you can actually very easily make little gods of your children.
So good. All right, let's go to table 2, everyone. Table 2. And we'll have a look at a couple of one another's for Jason and Janine. All right, what's a couple of one another's? And then we'll look at the means of grace they need to apply. All right, what's a couple of one another's they could be doing, Edgar? love one another. All right, that's a sacrificial love. So yeah, maybe Jason needs to be a little bit more considerate in his love towards his wife, and the same with Janine. Any others? Love is general and sacrificial, which is important. It could be applied to all scenarios. But let's drive in a bit more specific with these two. Any others? Be patient with one another. Yeah, I think that's a good one. Joel, S1 next to be patient with one another. Whereabouts is that on the list? It's about halfway down there. It is. I do see it. Ephesians 4:2, Colossians 3:13. Any others? Andrew, Rob, Matt, any in that corner? Kana? Honour one another. All right. Why do you say honour, Rob? I agree with you, but why do you say honour? Yeah, each role deserves honour, and yes, she may have things out of kilter a little bit, but she still is required to do those things that she's been asked to do. Anything else? Comfort one another. Hey, we'll work through this together. This is where the husband can be leading in just, it's going to be fine. We'll work through it. It might not happen this week, but we will get there. We need to get things in order. We're going to work on this. Yeah. Well, yeah, any way that they can agree to work together. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I remember when Virginia was a young mother, I would get home running musical instrument stores and I'd walk through the door and she would just have my eldest take her. I'm out. I'm done. It's been a big day. Okay, no problems. And my daughter would look at me and I would look at her and we would work things out. So good work, everyone. Let's go to our second scenario. Steve, I'm going to get you to read our second scenario between Danny and Dorothy. Again, put your listening ears on or take a couple of notes in your notebook there because you don't have those scenarios in front of you, but we'll certainly just listen, ladies, for the issues with Dorothy and fellas with Danny. Okay, thanks, Steve.
Danny and Dorothy, they've been committed to their Reformed church for many years now. They love the Lord and commit to serving him in whatever way they can. They have been married for 22 years, but a recent series of trials that they have faced have caused them to step back from being more actively involved in church activities. They both admit that their private prayer and Bible reading has dropped off, and Danny has never initiated praying together as a couple unless it is in a time of absolute necessity that they need God's help. Their infrequency at church has not helped in their marriage, as they have instinctively thrown themselves into their work roles and find that they no longer intentionally consider the people of God in their decision-making process. Consequently, when talking with Danny, Dorothy is more distant. Even when they are at home together, they do their own thing. He avoids bringing up what has happened because it will end in an argument with Dorothy, who he sees as strong-willed, and he never settles on a decision unless she is totally happy with it. Dorothy mentions that she is keen to have her husband lead and knows this is what the Bible teaches, but finds that by default she leads in the decision-making because that's how it has been in the past for the first decade of their marriage. Their pastor has reached out to them recently, encouraging them in the hope that they might be a part of next week's communion and church fellowship lunch.
All right, thanks, Steve. Danny and Dorothy, what are the issues that we see with Danny and Dorothy at the moment? What's going on there? Just big picture about their marriage. Dave, yes, communication is very, we'll do it when we have to. Emergencies, or you're on a need-to-know basis. So no structured organisation, all right? That's a problem. So write that one in. What else? Good work, Dave. Matt? Yes, so you've got a foundation here that's questionable. They both want the right thing for their marriage. They're both in sort of Christians, but wow, when the pressure comes, the cracks in the foundation start to show, don't they? Because where's the leadership? Where's the right? All right, so this is a lack of leadership and a lack of biblical order in the home. Write it in. All right, a lack of leadership, a lack of biblical order. And by the way, if the leadership isn't right in your home, you're out of order. It's as simple as that. All right, what other issues? We're hitting them on the head here. This is great. Edgar? Yeah, well, just priorities. All right, just priorities here. I mean, they're both hammering away at what they're doing, which is great, but what about, really, spiritually what? Spiritually weak. Sorry, what was that, Karen? Yeah, they're spiritually bankrupt. They're weak. Really, when the tough times hit, that's when we see what's in you spiritually, right? So this is where the house stands. When the devil throws everything at you, Paul presupposes after having done all, stand. Right? Sorry, getting into preaching mode there. Got to be careful. All right. Anything else? Steve, Karen, Virginia, did you guys have anything else there? Yeah, so faith in the trial. I remember a great preacher who preached that sermon just recently here, a few months ago. Yeah. So really, where's the faith that would have been growing, or trust in the Lord during that series of trials? Karen, Virginia, anything from you guys? Right, there it is. That sort of cognitive dissonance that goes on. Yes, I'm reformed and I believe all these things, but in practically, I'm just still doing what I do. Yeah. All right, so we've definitely nailed out some really clear things here. Totally smells of egalitarianism to me. And the drifting what? The drifting apart is certainly been happening. All right, the drifting apart. Now, who's the responsibility ultimately lie with here? Oh, Danny's got to get his butt kicked, right? He needs to get some help. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So, fellas, men, what are we going to tell Danny? What does he need to do? Come along to the monthly It's Good to Be a Man book study series where you learn to be a man and, grow up. All right, what else? What else do we need to do? What's the issues? Repent of what? Okay, so for husbands, you can write in spiritual leadership. Put in brackets, repent. I think the husband should go to the Lord and repent. He should be leading here, and he needs to. Avoids issues. Whose fault is it that they're infrequent at church? Hers or his? It's technically both, but who should be asking the questions? Why haven't we been to church for 3 weeks? Come on, Danny. Get it together, boy. All right? Um, yeah. A series of trials will cause them to, I don't know. But what is the issue there for him if he's not willing to serve? I don't want to get into an argument. I don't want to bring it up. It's anyone? We said spiritual leadership. I'd say it's fear of man. Fear of man. Yes. Courage. Bit of courage there. Okay. So what graces does he need, men? What grace? What graces does he need? Faith, we talked about, and his faith to embrace the task that God has given him. Andrew, what graces do you think Danny needs? Galatians 5, 2 Peter 1. What graces does he need? Well, he needs probably joy for the task. He's always worried about what's going to go wrong. He's a glass half empty guy, isn't he? Count it all joy. So yeah, the grace of the joy of Christ through this. Well, the Lord's using this to show me that I need to improve. So praise the Lord for that. I'm going to be joyful that God has got me on this. What about the grace of Kana? Great. Yes, yeah. And in this case, it would be leadership in diligence. All right, add to your diligence. So diligence, and I think another one starting with F. Brian? Faithfulness. Ladies, talk to me, ladies. What about Dorothy? You've already pointed out something. No, that's right. The ladies pick it up. Great, again, a submissive love there, working along with not having to always be happy with every possible decision. She can just work with it. Okay, let's work with this thing and get alongside her husband to help him man up in these areas of leadership that he needs to. She's sort of instrumental in causing this in some ways. All right, good work, Jess. Nat, anything for you? Rebecca? Amy? Laura? Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Great. So repentance from her, repentance and return to her first love. Go back to the scriptures and work through those things that she can see that her husband needs to do that. Love instead of opposing. Peace, the grace of peace. She's to contribute to the peace in the home. What about the grace, ladies? A grace starting with G. What does she need to incorporate? A grace starting with G. Gentleness. Just be gentle. Linda. Just be gentle. You guys know. Virginia used to do that with the girls. Spanish for, what is it Spanish for? Just gently, softly. Yeah. All right. What means, we didn't do this with the first couple, we'll go back and do it. What means of grace, 1 to 7, do they need to apply? You've numbered the means of grace on that page there. What means of grace do they need to apply? What numbers? Danny and Dorothy, what means do they need to press into? Give me numbers, guys. Yeah, literally 1 to 7. I had nearly the full list. So 1 is prayer. Yeah? They should be praying through this together. Do we think 2? Yes, they've lost their first love, particularly we're talking Dorothy as well there. Should they be sitting under they should be sitting under the corporately preached word? They've missed, what is it? They haven't been to church for infrequent. Church, the Lord's table, they'd be missing in that. Worship, a fellowship, getting around maybe some people that are kicking goals in this area to help them, and godly counsel and edification. So you could put there 1, 2, literally 3, 4. It shows you when you are at spiritual failure, you've forsaken the means of grace, doesn't it? It's a very good. Let's. Yeah. Yeah, the fellowship incorporated in that.
And this is the scary part of Christian life that I see many people running for. When you start,
You guys you're killing me on the microphone here, you guys. You've got to use it.
so when you attend a church, particularly a small one, some people fear being known. They fear the questions. They fear being asked. Honestly, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? They do not want to answer those questions. And so I can say out of all of them, number 6 and definitely number 7, if people are not doing number 6, they really want to seek counsel. They really want to be sat down and held accountable for the way they've been living and getting them to face reality in their lives. So I would really encourage people, it's great, all of the others, you must. But number 6 is so important to our personal growth and development. When you're being held accountable for what you're hearing, it's very hard.
Yeah. Let's just go back to scenario 1. What means of grace do Jason and Janine need? What numbers? Specifically, I know Steve's right. We can claim all 1 to 7, but specifically, let's try and find 3 or 4 for Jason and Janine. He's trying to instigate, just worship in the morning, praying together. She's struggling with her child, and she just wants to disconnect. What means of grace? What numbers? Number 1 is guaranteed. Yes, got to pray together. All right. Anything else? Yeah, so they're actually getting objective input. All right. That is the problem if you've only got 2 and not 3. It's one's subjective, one's objective. All right, so you've got that there as well. I had 6 and 7, Virginia, because they always link. Get them back into fellowship, get them rubbing shoulders with some people that are obviously doing okay in those areas. And the humility, grace of humility to just say, hey, we need help here. We're not doing this. It's funny, Virginia, you say that. We might have a family here and they're clearly struggling with their children because we don't have a Sunday school or anything. Neither will we. But they don't ask for help. Have you got anyone in the church? We don't want to just come here and then not go. They end up getting frustrated. They don't deal with it like they should, and they just end up going to a church that has a Sunday school. Makes sense. So just a challenge there. Okay, Virginia, Freddie and Frida. All right, listening, everyone. Virginia, I've just explained to the guys that they don't have their scenarios, so they've got to be listening, so I should have supplied the scenario. So Freddie and Frida, please.
Freddie and Frida are old 80s rockers who got saved many years ago, and with their kids grown up, they have found themselves alone in their large house. As the kids got older and then left home, Freddie admits that he didn't work to stay close to Frida and confesses to you that because they are never really intimate anymore, that he often finds himself thinking about other women. He knows that this is wrong, but after confessing it to Frida, she has distanced herself even more, and now the spending she has always struggled with is officially out of control, according to Freddie. Furthermore, they both feel guilty that they should be giving to the Lord's work faithfully, but can't afford it because of their credit card debt. The feeling of shame causes them not to want to go to church and fellowship with others because they will be asked questions they don't want to answer. Frida knows that Freddie won't go to the pastor for help, even though the problems have been going on for years. Frida thinks that it is most likely out of pride that Freddie won't seek help or ask for counsel for them both, as he might look weak and incapable of fixing things himself. Frida confesses that it has been over a month since she has prayed for her husband and can no longer pray in all good conscience to forgive him.
Oh, Freddie and Frida. Wow. What are the issues? Guys, what have we got? Brian? Yeah, so here the foundation over many years, which was always there to see, is now totally exposed through a series of events that have exposed that. All right, building on the wrong foundation. Anything else? So wrong foundation you can write in there? Great, they weren't working at it, Amy. They just were drifting apart. All right? Lack of intimacy, excellent. You're nailing it here. So you're right at the top. I'm putting you at the top of the class right now. All right? Yeah, you got to work at being close together. It won't happen by accident, will it? So they got to work at these things. What else is an issue here? Yeah, so here's a bloke, and look, plenty of blokes have this issue. All blokes have to control it. Is the wandering eye. All right? Now he's thinking, and fellas, you know nobody knows what you're thinking apart from the Lord, of course. So you talk yourself that you can get away with it. Right? You got to be very careful with that sort of stuff. So you got Freddie, who's zoned out so far that he's now like heading in a different direction, which is scary. What else have we got? Sorry, I missed. Yeah, who's stubborn? Yeah. That is the outward issue. What's the heart issue? Pride. Good work, Dave. All right, so, yeah, I mean, again, for the husband, you can write down pride. I'd say they are spiritually what? Weak. Again, here's this, we want to give, we want to do this, we want to do that, all these great things, but in the end, they can't string just consistency together here, even in their own marriage. And of course, we know that's fatal for even serving in the Lord's house, because if you can't bring order at home, how are you going to contribute to it in church? Yeah, so there's issues here of even the gospel being right. So even just, is the gospel being modelled at home? So let's go to husbands. Fellas, we've talked about pride. What is other things for Freddie, fellas? What graces does he need? What does he need help with? Very selfish. All right, very selfish. Selfishness is a self-control issue, so he needs the grace of self-control. All right, anything else, fellas? Jake, Dave? Yeah, this is certainly a repentance issue for Freddie, because, his faithfulness, he's being disloyal, even in his own heart, to his wife. All right, there's areas, Kana, any other areas for Freddie, particularly with his wife? I'm thinking of an L word here that he needs to apply. Bit of leadership, yep, particularly over the spending. All right, if he thinks it's out of control, why is he letting it snowball? Why doesn't he say something? Apart from just complaining. You're out of control, woman. Well, yeah, but work with her. What's driving that bad habit? I think I would work with Freddie where, fellas? Where it first becomes unhinged in your thinking. So virtuous thinking, godliness, godly thinking. Steve, did you have anything else for Freddie? I know he's a bit of a basket case at the moment, but... I remember when we first read this scenario with Steve and Karen got really angry at Freddie. I know what I'd be doing with Freddie. Right? The holy headbutt, that's right. I was just going to say something else there for a minute. I got myself sidetracked. Ladies, let's go to the... We'll put Freddie on the frying pan in a minute again because he just deserves grilling. But what about ladies? What about Frida? She's still in the equation. What's going on with her? Jess? Great. So almost an escapism through spending, isn't it? Self-control is the grace required. Good work there, Jess. And the other thing could be the sin behind it, which you said was what? Greed. Yeah, good work. Jess, you're very quiet, but you've got good answers. All right, Nat, anything for you? Rebecca, just working the way around to the ladies around the room. Frida? Yeah, which is leading to what, Rebecca? I mean, she's at a point now that she can't what? The grudge has become what? Unforgiveness. Which is definitely, you've lost the gospel when you can't forgive, when you consider how much you've been forgiven. Andrew, haven't heard much from you. You want to chime in something for Frida, the scenario here? Yeah, I mean, I've painted some pretty disturbing scenarios, but these are... I mean, historically for me, these things happen in Christian marriages, all right? Now, people can fall from grace, so to speak, right? They can become unhinged in their marriages, and it happens. Dare I say it happens more than I'd like to see. But that's why we're bringing this stuff up, all right? We probably wouldn't have much to say if, we were talking about some other couples that we know, but, we've got couples in our church that are struggling, right? This happens. So yeah, that's a good point. I think even for Karen, did you have anything else for Frida?
For both of them, I think the root cause of the problem is the issue. All these other things are just the fluff that comes from the root cause.
Yeah.
And both of them are not walking with the Lord. So you could probably say they need to restore fellowship with the Lord to begin with, because it's like shooting at the foundation. You need to, all these behaviours and attitudes and other things that are causing mayhem in their home or with their relationship are stemming from the one thing, and it's always the root cause behind it. And both of them have not really nurtured their walk with the Lord, I don't believe. And with the unfaithfulness, it's a really huge deal for women.
Yes.
And Paul is very, the scriptures speak to the fact that if a man thinks about another woman, he may as well have committed adultery. And Freddie's doing that because he's not walking with the Lord. There's no excuse otherwise. And Frida's not coping with that because they're one flesh, and that union has been broken emotionally. Do you know, it doesn't always have to be broken physically. So that's why she struggles with the forgiveness. So the root cause is probably the lack of fellowship with God and walking with Him, and then all these other things are all snowballing as a result
resultant
of
effect
that.
of that. Yeah, this really does bring us back to the importance of spiritual strength in a marriage. And when you undermine the means of grace, I mean, let's just talk about the means of grace for a moment. Literally, let's go through it. Freddie and Frida, do they need number one? Yes. Do they need number two? Yeah, they've said they've just dropped off all that sort of stuff. Do they need number three? Yeah. 4, 5, 6, 7, they need all of them. And it's Swiss cheese at the moment. It's like a wasteland here where they need all of these things. Let's do one putting off and putting on men for Freddie, and one putting on, putting off ladies for Frida, in any order, wherever you find them. Freddie should put off. Yep. Okay. Is that where is that in the order of things, Steve? A lack of love, or lost first love. There's a couple there. So there's a lack of love. There's a lost first love. Okay. And I put him as in that second box down in the S's, spiritual adultery. Dead to sin, alive to God. He needs to mortify his flesh. Ladies, where's Frida? What's Frida need to do? All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The other God would be, to name it. Yep. All right, so an S3W there for other gods. Anything else for the lady? I've got under you there, under you an unforgiving spirit, S3W. Yeah? Even maybe, what about J for judging? I know that sounds harsh because of Freddie's actions, but she should also then put on searching my own sin. I know he's got issues. I know he's a sinner, but what about my own sin? All right. Any others there? Yeah. Yeah, and they're being grieved. Think about it a minute. They both believe that they're called for the gift of giving, and they're being grieved because of their situation with debt. They want to give to God's work. You know, I don't know, but they sit in a missions offering and go, we would have loved to give a bunch of money there, but we can't give anything because of our own decisions. What one another's do they need to work through? What could they apply? Give me 2 one another's, everyone, that Freddie and Frida could apply. Brian? Yeah, where's that in the one another's? That is table 2. I mean, that's a grace they need to apply. Agreed? Yeah, in table 2, everyone. Amy, you got one? Honour one another. Yeah, they need to know what it is to get back down to that sacrificial love for one another. I don't think they've even got the roles right yet to honour as such. I think they need to get back to that foundation. Andrew, you got one? Yeah. Well, we're trying to cherry pick a few to at least help them to get started. You know, it is true. We can say all the means of grace. We can say all the one another's. It is true. All the graces are necessary in their time and season, but we're just trying to cherry pick a few to give you the skill. Forgiving one another is an excellent one. Is that where you were going to go, Edgar? Yeah, fantastic. Exactly. Good. Get them on the table, talk them through. Great. Yeah, good, Virginia. Yeah. Okay, so bearing with one another is an excellent one because you need to work this through. This isn't going to get fixed in a couple of days. We're going to need to forgive. We're going to need to, you got to bury the hatchet, don't you? All right, you got to move on. So you've got to make that stuff happen. Okay, the means of grace. Well, we covered that, didn't we? It's literally all of them. By the way, everyone, we really could have done a whole day on the means of grace today, and maybe we do a one-dayer on the means of grace. Need to really put some stuff up on the website about that too. All right, well, what I wanted to do now is once we've done that session, we've talked through that, the plan there is that you should be able to now, as a couple, look at an issue you've got, all right? Look at an issue or issues you've got, work out, then apply the one another's, apply the put-on, put-offs, apply the means of grace, and you've got some tools to work with, haven't you? You've got some good tools to work with here. Men to lead the conversation with and to make that a reality. All right, so if you have been tuning into our sessions, thank you for tuning in. You've got the resources page, you've got everything else, and you've also got the homework template that you can look at, which I'll put online, which we're about to talk about later. So you can utilise that homework template called IGMAF so that you're able to work through that acrostic with any issues that you've got. Well, blessings, and thank you for tuning in.